The UK's Prime Minister met with workers at a shipbuilding plant in the northwest of England on Thursday and laid out his thoughts on the upcoming increase on defence spending and how that may affect the plant. "I do think Europe needs to step up on security and defence more broadly, and I want to win contracts for you and others as that happens," Keir Starmer told workers during a stand-up question and answer session. According to Associated Press, with regard to Ukraine, Starmer repeated his desire to find peace in the war between them and Russia, but also laid out that Britain's future must be working with the US on defense. "On Ukraine, obviously, it's really important that we focus on what matters most, and what matters most, in my view, is a lasting peace that ensures that Ukraine is both sovereign, able to make their own decisions, and secure," he said. "It has to be done in conjunction with the United States because we have, for many decades, worked very closely with the United States," he added. His comments come as European Union leaders are holding emergency talks on Thursday in Brussels on ways to quickly increase their military budgets after the Trump administration signaled that Europe must take care of its own security and also suspended assistance to Ukraine. In just over a month, President Donald Trump has overturned old certainties about US reliability as a security partner, as he embraces Russia and withdraws American support for Ukraine.
Well, on Ukraine, obviously, it's really important that we focus on what matters most. And what matters most, in my view, is a lasting peace that ensures that Ukraine is both sovereign, able to make their own decisions, and secure, so in a position where we don't just stop the fighting for it to start again in a year or two or three. For that to happen, obviously, it's important that we are all focused on that, and it is important that if there is a deal, and we don't know there will be, that we defend the deal. And that means that we need to think about what's the guarantee, what's the security guarantee. And what I've said is, I think Europe needs to step up into this space. We've said for a long time that Europe needs to do more on its own security and defence. I think that's right. And the United Kingdom will play a leading part because we've always stepped up when it's required. So that's why I've made that commitment on behalf of our country. It has to be done in conjunction with the United States because we have for many decades worked very closely with the United States. You will know through the work you do that our defence, our security, our intelligence is intertwined. No two other countries are as close when it comes to defence and security as our two countries. So we want to do this in conjunction with the United States because it's that ability to work with the United States and with our European partners that has kept the peace for 80 years now. That's why it's important we step up into this space. In the meantime, we need to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position. We don't know there's going to be a deal. The fighting is going on, and it's a big mistake to think, well, all we've got to do is wait for a deal now. We've got to make sure that if they are fighting on, they're in the strongest position, and even if they go into negotiation, they're in the strongest position. I do think Europe needs to step up on security and defence more broadly, and I want to win contracts for you and others as that happens, because as the whole of Europe steps up, and I do think it will, that means it's not just the demands, as it were, of our government, it's other governments as well will be looking around to see, well, where can we place our orders for the capability we need? And I know we're good enough, we're leading enough in this country to say you should be putting your orders with us. I think as we go forward with defence and security, we're going to have to press forward on sea, on air, on land. If you look at the Ukraine conflict, it's clear that maritime, what we're doing at sea, has been a huge part of that. And therefore, as we go through our strategic review, as we look at what does the next chapter of our history hold, it's clear that maritime shipbuilding is going to have to be a big part of that. You may have seen that last week we announced the highest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, and that means that defence spending is going to come on track by 2027, and then a sustained year-on-year increase. And I want that to be something which is really significant towards the defence and security of our country, much needed at the moment, but I also want it to be measured in jobs and businesses and skills in this country and in places like this.
Relieving pressure on the Russian army could allow Moscow to start new battles in Europe, Business Insider reports, citing current and former ministers and retired officers. It is noted that Europe is seriously concerned about possible Russian aggression outside of Ukraine. Defence expert and former commander of the UK's chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear forces, Hamish de Breton-Gordon, has warned that the Russian war machine is currently in overdrive. He said a ceasefire in Ukraine without security guarantees would allow Russia to continue producing more tanks and aircraft and take steps to improve its military. The former commander of the US Army in Europe, retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, said that refusing to provide aid to Ukraine without security guarantees risks giving Russian leader Vladimir Putin a reprieve to rebuild his forces and attack again. He also recalled that Russia has several frozen conflicts in Europe, including the so-called Transnistria. Putin could return to these places if his army is freed from fighting in Ukraine. Let us recall that recently, French President Emmanuel Macron stated that Putin will definitely go to Moldova and possibly further to Romania if he is not stopped. He warned that Russia posed a serious existential threat to Europe. Our security is at stake. We have an overarmed and aggressive Russia on our borders. According to him, if Washington agreed to sign a ceasefire without any security guarantees for Ukraine, then the US ability to exert geostrategic deterrence against Russia, China and others would disappear that same day. Donald Trump's ambitions are the opposite of this, the French president is sure. He is convinced that the United States has no choice but to resume dialogue with Ukraine. The obvious destiny of the Americans is to be on the side of the Ukrainians. I have no doubt about this. What the United States has done over the past 3 years is entirely consistent with its diplomatic and military traditions. I want to make it clear to the Americans that disengagement from Ukraine is not in their interests, he said. Macron also emphasized that everyone agrees to make peace, but there can be no just and lasting peace if Ukraine is abandoned to its fate.